Andy Saczynski is a Florida artist with an art gallery in Grayton Beach, which is about 2.5 hours from Mobile. He often reuses things he finds, like old wood or broken instruments, and puts them together in new ways before painting. Gulf Coast wildlife has been an important source of inspiration for Andy. One of my favorite animals that he creates is the American alligator. He often assembles the alligators from scraps of wood, but some have things like old guitars, records, piano keys, pieces of metal, or old tools to be part of the structure. After he assembles his alligators, he adds paint. To make the alligators even more interesting, he adds a variety of shapes and lines and patterns. Some of his lines are vertical, up and down. Some are horizontal, side to side, diagonal, zigzag, dotted, dashed, or swirled. If you look at the alligator in sections, he often repeats a type of line in each section. The repeating of those lines and the bright contrasting colors help to give the alligator rhythm. You may think that rhythm is just for music, but if you look for it, rhythm can be found in art. Rhythm in art sometimes happens when things repeat and create a pattern. The pattern is similar to the beat in music. In music, the beat carries the listener through a song, but in visual art, the rhythm carries the eye through the art. Instead of just looking in one place, the rhythm helps move your eye around and see all of the artwork. Today I'm going to show you how to make an alligator inspired by artist Andy Saczynski's work. I made this one out of a piece of copy paper, and I will show you how to assemble one of these. If you don't have a piece of paper, you could always reuse things like food packages, old recycled papers. You could even use things like wrapping paper or an old gift bag if it's not being used anymore. So that's one way to do it. I'm going to show you how to make one out of a piece of paper. So you take your piece of paper. This is just a normal piece of copy paper that goes in a printer. And I'm first going to fold it this way. I think we call this hot dog style at school. So you're going to make sure that your corners match. Then press it down once your corners match. Put my crayon down so I don't make marks all over it. So once everything's pretty even, you have a nice long rectangle. You can open it back up and you see your crease that goes across here. Now you're going to fold it across the other way. Okay, so fold it that way. Make sure your corners match as well as you can, and then press down that crease. So when you open, you should have your lines that cross in the middle of your page. I'm going to move my little alligator friend out of the way for right now. We need to divide this to make the different parts of our alligator body. This whole section across the top is going to be the main long rectangle in our alligator body. So I will draw a line that just goes straight across the page. I'm going to go ahead and use a crayon. You could use a crayon for this step too. If you want to, you can use your pencil first and then trace over it with a crayon later. So as much as I can, trace across that line. And you can use any color crayon that you want to. I'm using green. I used purple when I made my example. And you don't have to always use the same color. If you want to use different colors of crayons for different sections, you can do that too. He used lots of different colors in his work. Okay, this top section we're going to leave alone, but this bottom section where it kind of makes a T shape, we are going to trace the line where we folded it across here. So now we have one big rectangle for the body, and then we need to make the head and the tail and all of the other alligator parts. So on one side of the bottom, I'm going to turn that into my head and my tail, all from one piece. So I will start at the outside edge, take my crayon, and I'm going to make a triangle shape. If it helps you to draw your triangle to turn your page this way, you could certainly do that. So draw kind of a triangle shape. You don't want to go all the way to this line because this is going to become the mouth and you don't want to cut it apart. So maybe make yourself a dot so you know about where to stop, say about right there. And that's about an inch, about the length of the top of your thumb away from that line. And then draw one line to connect down to this point. And then another line to connect down. Ooh, mine's a little wavy. That's okay, to this point. So that is going to end up being, when we turn it this way, this is going to be an alligator head. See the big mouth open? This part, when we cut here, will turn into our triangle tail. So this part is going to be this part, the tail, and this part is the mouth. Now don't worry about teeth yet. We're going to get those from another piece. And the eye and the legs. We're going to all make those pieces out of this. So we need to get 2 legs. We need to have an eye. And I like a big eyeball for this alligator, but you may do whatever size or shape eyeball you would like. And we need our arms and our little alligator toes. I'm also going to try to make some little spikes that I can put on top of my alligator. Those are optional. If you don't want any spikes on your alligator, you don't have to have them. And I also need some teeth. So a lot has to happen in this one little rectangle. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, and the biggest thing I have are my feet. So I'll go ahead and draw the feet first. And you may draw these a different way. You may have a different way that works better for you. I'm again going to kind of turn my page so that you can get a better idea of why I'm drawing this, and do my 2. This is going to be 1 alligator leg. See, there's the 2 lines for the outside of my leg shape there, kind of like a rectangle. I'll go ahead and do my other alligator leg. I'm leaving a little space in between it because I need to be sure that I can have room for my alligator toes. I also left room on either side here, again, because the toes kind of flare out away from that alligator body. So if you want to go ahead and do sort of a zigzaggy line, and then I'll do another one here, connect that better, kind of a zigzaggy line. And now I have alligator feet. Another piece that you may want to add is an alligator tongue sticking out, and it's sort of a long, squiggly line. So if you want to add a tongue, go ahead, and you can do it between those legs and add a tongue. Now, if it were just a single line, you would end up cutting off part of it when you cut it, and it would be hard to paint and everything. So let's go ahead and make it thicker. So along that same shape, just trace it and make yourself a long, squiggly snake shape for that tongue. I want to have an eyeball, so I'm going to draw sort of a big circle. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. And you can decide what color you want the pupil of your alligator eyeball to be. I may go ahead and make this one black, but you can choose whatever pupil you want, and whatever pupil style you want is fine too. This one I left a little highlight in it, this one I didn't. Either way is fine. Now I'm going to add in some triangle shapes for our spikes. If you don't want spikes on your alligator, you could just skip this part. So I will draw in some of our empty spaces some triangle shapes. And you can make them as big or as small as you want. Now along here, I'm just going to draw another line because I can also turn this side into triangle spaces. And make as many spikes as you think you want. You also need some teeth. So I'm going to add in some little spaces in here. This is all going to be cut out later. So you just fit it in wherever you can. If you think you might want a few more teeth, you could add more teeth here. And you can always come back and add more things to your scraps of paper, or you could just get another piece of paper if you have more paper and want to cut out more things. But these are our basic alligator body parts. So the next thing I want to do is start adding in different patterns. Use different kinds of lines, because he had really great different kinds of lines in his artwork, and the way he added lines that repeat in different sections, it really gave his artwork a sense of rhythm, and the way it kind of makes your eye move through the piece and look at all those little details. It kind of helps you flow through. So if you want to think of some different lines that you could add maybe to your alligator's body, on this one I did some little small C shapes. It almost looks like scales. I did some zigzaggy lines. These lines are almost like the top of a castle. On this part, I did squiggly, swirly lines, zigzaggy lines, and kind of plaid lines. If you're using crayon and then watercolor on top, go ahead and do all of your lines first with a crayon. Once you paint on top of them with watercolor, the crayon will still show up and it will be a watercolor resist. The crayon resists the watercolor. So all of your beautiful designs will not get washed away, they'll show up. And this is copy paper, so some of your paint may bleed a little. That just means it spreads out a little beyond where you want it to go. I knew that would happen, but I really thought for this alligator that was okay. I was okay with my colors not staying exactly where I put them. If you have thicker paper, you can use thicker paper and you won't have that bleeding. So let's say we just decide that we're going to do some kind of diagonal lines, maybe for this section. And again, you can use any color crayon that you want to. You can switch it up and use rainbow colors, or you could use whatever colors that you like. And you don't have to only use one crayon color. If you had oil pastels at home, this would be a great place to use oil pastels too. Okay, so I did sort of a chevron kind of thing. Now I might go back and do sort of that C shape here. See how I'm doing C lines? And then you can come back and add more C lines, and it gives you kind of that scaly look. So I'll keep adding my C's, and I did big C's on this part. You can do big or small. And give it that scaly alligator look. And then if you want to add some patterns to your legs, and you could even do something like polka dots if you wanted to. You could do zigzags, you can do stripes. I kind of like the zigzags on the legs, so I'm just going to do a couple of little zigzags. I think the tongue is so small that I may not add anything to it, but if you wanted to add polka dots or hearts or whatever you wanted to that, you could. Also, I didn't add any to my scales or my spikes just because they're so small in comparison to everything else. Now, after you have done this, you may want to go ahead and paint everything first. I think it's easier to paint it when it's still together, because if you smear any paint, it doesn't go on your table or wherever else. It just sort of goes on to the next section. Oh, I forgot to add details to my tail. Let me add some details to my tail. Let's see. I'll do again kind of a swirly whirly line like that, just for fun. And I know it gets a little tricky when you look at it this way to tell what's what. But I'm going to go ahead and start cutting. If I had painted, I would go ahead and paint all of this, let it dry before you cut, because if you try to cut wet paper, it may tear. But if this was already painted, I'm going to cut. I'm going to free up that tail first. And you can cut in any order that you want to. I just wanted to go ahead and cut out my tail. So there's my alligator tail. Here's my alligator face coming up next. I'm going to go ahead and cut along this whole line. So I have my alligator body, my alligator tail. Here is my alligator head coming up with that big alligator mouth. I'm going to overlap it just a little bit to be sure you can see. Check my camera. Yeah, you can see that. Okay, so now I'm going to cut out these legs. Be careful around your alligator toes. Kind of let the hand that you're not cutting with do your steering. Get all that alligator hand cut out. It's a cute little alligator hand. It's going to go about right there. Cut your other one out. I was looking, and I think alligators actually have 5 toes or fingers, kind of like people do, which is sort of crazy. They have kind of human-looking hands, and they even have little fingernails on their toes. All right, so here's our spikes. Let me show you kind of how you might want to do that. So you can cut these, and I'm just going to cut and stop right about there so that I don't cut off each triangle individually. Just makes it a little bit easier to glue, but if you cut them out individually, that's okay too. So there's one little strip. And if you wanted to have more spikes on yours, that's okay. Either way looks good. So choose, you know, about where you want those and how many you want. If you wanted more, you have extra space, you could always come back and add more. Now these smaller triangles were going to be my teeth. And I'm leaving mine white in my examples. If you wanted some other color teeth for your alligator, I guess that's okay. But I didn't think they needed any pattern or color. All right, so there's one little row of teeth. And if you wanted more teeth, you could do that too. I just did a few little teeth for my alligator. There's so many details. Just two little bottom teeth. Little alligator. Cut out that tongue. And I would kind of stick that right about there. And your eyeball. And I've got a few more spikes I could cut out, but I think you get the idea. So I will go ahead and cut out this eyeball and kind of be done with my cutting for now. Okay, so the eyeball can kind of go about right there. Now once you have everything cut out, use whatever you have to stick it together. I used glue for this one, just liquid glue. If you had a glue stick, also if you had a stapler and someone will let you use a stapler, you could staple it. You could even use tape and tape it on the back. So whichever way you have to assemble it, you do that. If you don't have any way to stick it together, you could always leave it in pieces and almost have it like a puzzle that you can put together. Again, if you don't have paper, you could use something like packages and make this cute little fat alligator, depending on how big your packages are. I can't wait to see what you come up with for your beautiful alligators.